Hi, this is Eternal King here bringing you another LOR video today. So we are going to be looking at the Eternal meta, just 100% unflinching analysis of what the Eternal meta is in terms of like what you want to play and how you should play it. So I'll go through all the staples. Some of the staples I've had a hand in creating, and then some of the staples have just existed for a long time outside of me in particular. So of course, first one is Thresh Nasus. Thresh Nasus is very easy to play because it has enough spells to be reactive and then enough creature spam tempo to be threatening, and then a high-end wincon with the likes of Nasus and Atrocity. It's essentially perfect archetypal mid-range. Some spells, lots of creatures, and then an OTK wincon. Very, very good. It's hard to complain about Thresh Nasus in terms of what the deck is doing. Its level of reactivity, its level of board presence, and its level of lethal representation in deadlocked board states. It's very, very good. Moving on from that, Emp Army. Obviously, I was the one that popularized Emp Army. Just across the board, I called it as an immediate 3 of in this deck, and ever since then, Emp Army has existed in all top-tier versions, not all top-tier versions of Azir Aurelia. Some people put up stats and they cut the Emp Army, but for the most part, and in terms of the stats that we have represented on Runeterra AR right now, it is an Emp Army version because Emp Army is simply the best version of Azir Aurelia. It allows you to lock in value in a landmark, and landmarks are harder to interact with. So if someone's just running a bunch of pings and mystic shots and control spells, Emp Army can still get value locked behind a landmark, which is harder to remove. So obviously Blade Dance Emp Army, one of the best tempo decks in the game, and I had a hand in updating it for the most current Eternal seasons. I did that about 5-6 months ago, and it's basically stayed the same ever since. Swim LOR, this is Majin Bae's contribution to the meta. Again, lots of pings, lots of removal, lots of cycling. We've gone through Swim LOR quite a bit. It will remain one of the best decks forever. Temple constructions, right? So most people who want to be competitive with their temple construction will do so with the ping heavy variant, low mana commitment, lots of cycling bodies. So that's, Ezreal Seraphine in a Temple shell, but be honest, you could run Ezreal Seraphine without Temple and it'd be fine. And alternatively, you can also run Temple without Ezreal or Seraphine, right? And then run in Nilla TF. It's just like Temple, good card. Regardless of how you want to run it, you can run it all in kind of meme like I do and win all your games, or you can run it only with 1 mana spells and 2 mana spells, and that would be slightly more competitive. Moving on from that, obviously Eddy Matron Spam, right? Eddy Matron Spam is one of the most competitive things you can do in Eternal. Very, very strong, very competitive. Because again, you just Matron Haze Show, Cythria, right? And then you win the game. Moving on from that, you have various creature aggro constructions. So what are the best creature aggro decks? Well, creature aggro, you're basically on, you can play Annie Jin, and I just recently ran into like the top 10 Asian player running a meme version of Annie Jin. Which I was running Poros into. So again, if you're running into someone who actually knows how to play the game and you're playing Poros, it's not going to go great for you. I was playing Poros because Swim loved Poros, and like once you get bored of winning all the time, typically you switch to Poros because that's what Swim used to do. It's just like, I need to challenge myself by playing a bad deck, and then you instantly run into the best possible player on the format, and you're like, oh, okay, I really wish I was playing a deck with spells in it. But yeah, anyway, I digress. Best version of creature-based aggro, very much looking like Vex tempo, right? Snap the Ziggs, snap the Vex, and then just play a lot of 1-droppy spam, 2-droppy spam stuff, and then put the opponent into a burn win condition position. That's basically it. And then obviously an alternative would be Annie Jin. Seen a lot of tournament play, a lot of pro player play, because it's one of those decks that you can never entirely count out of the meta. Annie Jin is just one of those creature-based aggro decks that in specific situations does very, very well. Obviously, if your opponent snap plays the Jin on board and can just go crazy, that's going to be really good for them. If the opponent snap plays the Jin and then you rocket barrage it, that's going to be really bad for them. And then you just win the game, right? So obviously, that's one of those cases where typically you don't want to snap play the Jin on 4 in your anti-Jin deck unless you're 100% confident that the opponent has 0 reactive spells in their entire construction. Because otherwise the Jin's going to die. Moving on from that, obviously ramp constructions, right? So it can be Eddy ramp, or it could be non-Eddy ramp. It's just a question of like what is performing best in that very second. Usually it's going to be Eddy ramp. It's going to be matron spam Eddy ramp because that's such a powerful win condition to go into. But if you really want, you can play around with some Field of Rush brews. You know, it could be set Trundle. Field of Rush, or it could be, you know, and it could be a Volibear Field of Rush deck. It really just depends on what you're feeling in that very moment. We have seen times where Set Trundle has actually outstatted Ramp Eddy. So like it is possible to build a ramp construction, an optimal ramp construction that is better than Eddy sometimes. Other times Eddy's just better. Ramp Eddy's just better, yeah. Moving on to other meta decks. So creature-based aggro, then okay, of course combo. I'm the only person that has valid stats right now for Rise. So the only Rise deck that you will see on Runeterra AR is in fact, before it was Majin Rise, and then Majin Rise fell off sub 50% because of the one-ofs and the lack of commitment to a certain principle. And then I upgraded that with a you know, at least a 50% win rate Rise list. I win 80% with it. Then the top person who tried piloting it, other than me, was winning 60% of games with it. So no matter how you cut it, especially if you're on the Gruesome Theater version, this is a good deck. This is optimal Rise. So that's the best combo deck, and like that's kind of the meta, right? Control, rally-based win conditions, temple-based win conditions, OTK with like burn, so burn decks, you know, some mid-range mixed in there, but that's fundamentally the entirety of Eternal as a format, and I'm more or less represented on the two polar opposites of the spectrum. I can either present the best tempo decks in existence with Emp Army as Aurelia, or I can present the best anti-tempo decks in existence with Rise combo, and then obviously I have my own takes on things like Temple as well, which is going to just come down to the individual person's preference. But that's basically where I come in, and then also I have my own takes on ramp and things like that. But that's the entirety of the meta. So does that mean you can't win with off meta decks or bad meta decks? No, absolutely. There are going to be situations where you just roll the ladder dice and like things just come up your way, right? A great example, right? You play Annie on 1, it doesn't get answered. You slap Book onto Annie and duplicate her skill procs because you're that confident that the opponent just doesn't have basic interaction. You're just 100% guaranteed to know that Book is going to land on your Annie, right? So you're just like 100%, I know I can do this, I can do that, and then I can do Jin, right? 100% not at all threatened by anything that, you know, the meta's offering you or anything your opponent's doing, right? There's your Jin, your Annie Jin deck. Obviously, you put in the other standard skill proccers. You could do, you know, PNZ on 2. Boom Crew Rookie, you can do Bilgewater on 1, like you're just not at all concerned about anything in your deck having to be reactive or that anything you're doing is going to be reacted by the opponent. If you're just like 100% guaranteed confident on that front, go for it. Absolutely. Most people are going to be building decks that are decently reactive into, you know, a 1-mana 1/1. And slapping a Book onto an Annie, and then snap removing the 0/2 Annie, so like, you know, ping, Mystic Shot, you know, something slightly bigger into the Jin. Like, this is all very, very easy to interact with, because I piloted Annie Jin a bunch. Like, I know it's a good deck. But to be that that far into the skill proc duplication, like all in on this, and then Might as well run the 5 mana card too, right? Because we're just going in on the skill proc duplication. Because we're 100% confident like nothing is ever getting removed or interacted with. But, you know, you need to have the stats to show it off as well, right? There you go. All right, we might as well run Headmistress, Telsey, because we're just like 100% guaranteed that things are not getting interacted with or interrupted in any way, shape, or form. Yeah, that's about the extent of it. If I was to say, like, how do I feel about something like this? Well, it's going to be a swing or a miss kind of situation, right? Obviously, the current version of Anijin that is most competitive on Runeterra AR, and again, this is just me strictly going off of stats, is actually a control variant. They've entirely teched Anijin to be a control deck with Ravenbloom because they're making the call that they are less confident in all-in win conditions, and they want to be more so on the Ravenbloom slow burn, right? Basically Ravenbloom plus, you know, a burn end. So like slow rolling the Annie and the Jin. So they're just confident that the Ravenbloom construction is better. But that doesn't mean it is. Just because you see stats on Runeterra AR that says that Ravenbloom Annie Jin or slow Annie Jin is better than fast Annie Jin, that doesn't mean it's true. If you feel that you can snap Ravenborn Tomb and just like win all your games and snap Headmistress Telsey and win all your games, like it's going to catch some people off guard because they just won't have the removal cards. Like don't run into Temple or my version of Temple, God forbid. You'll be snap removing everything. But the point being that yeah, don't run into anyone with Mystic Shot. Don't run into anyone with, obviously Shadow Isles has tons of cheap removal as well, with the likes of Quietus and Hate Spike and, you know, just so many things, Soul Harvest. So you're basically making the call that like none of these cards exist when you go all in Ravenbloom Headmistress. But sometimes they don't exist. And like that's kind of the beautiful thing about Eternal is that like if you find that one right matchup where someone's just memeing hard into you, it's going to feel like the most powerful thing in the game. And in fact, I would recommend going all in on concepts when you have that read for the meta. Right? We talk a lot about the micro meta and like how it changes. There's the meta of Eternal, but then there's the micro meta of Eternal. If you're 100% guaranteed that Ravenbloom is going to find play and that Headmistress Telsey is going to find play, just run the cards. Like, yeah, absolutely. Removal cards don't exist based on the last 3 games you played. Go for it. Absolutely. Nothing's stopping you. That being said, if you find that removal cards do exist, you might have a harder time, right? Snap Mystic the Annie, Snap Ping the Corsair, Soul Harvest the Boom Crew rookie, right? Possibly just Snap Vengeance the Jin on when it gets played. Like, there's just like a lot of things that you can do that would cause us to be a problem. And in that instance where someone is just snap answering certain memes that you're running or cards that you're running, you would wish that you were on like standard Noxian Fervor Decimate because those are less easy to answer. The chances of people having creature removal right now versus the chances of people having burn denies or healing is actually substantially like in your favor if you're the burn player. Burn decks will just auto win every matchup. I have a 100% win rate with like stupid things like Riven, Draven, burn, because burn is just good right now. I made that call and I've never lost with the deck. If you can make the call that you don't want the burn, instead you just want duplicate skill procs and have that turn into burn because you're guaranteed that your creatures are not getting answered, then do that, right? That's the micro meta. That's what I talk about constantly in my videos, is that if you have a read, commit to it 100%. Go with your gut, just do it. I tell people that all the time. As much as I can sit here and tell you what the meta is, you know, best rally deck, best control deck, best mid-range deck, best temple deck, you know, best aggro deck, you know, Ziggs Poppy or upgraded Ziggs Poppy. As much as I can stand here and tell you that these things are good, burn aggro, right? Probably don't play all-in archetypal kind of meme stuff. Maybe play ramp if you find that it's doing well. All of this stuff, best combo, all of these things I can stand here and tell you that these things are very, very good and very, very strong. But at the end of the day, if you have the read on the micro meta, right? If you have the read that skill proc Annie is better than burn Annie Jin, right? Skill proc Annie Jin versus burn Annie Jin. If you have that read that just no one's going to interact with your board ever, that the stun units aren't finding traction because people are going too wide and the stuns don't do anything. If you have all these firm calls on the current Eternal meta, then absolutely go for it, right? Drop everything. Drop everything. Every single card that you think might be beneficial or traditional in a burn aggro shell, other than like this stuff that you know that you need. So you keep half the package and then you replace half the package with all-in sort of, skill proc double downs. And it'll work for you sometimes, and sometimes it won't. And it all depends on the micro meta. What are you running into right now? What are your opponents playing right now? And what can they do to stop you? And if you're 100% guaranteed that nobody can stop you with anything, then you're in a good spot. You're in a great spot, quite frankly. You'll turbo your Annie, you'll turbo your Jin. But, you have to present also the long-term stats for that specific deck construction before anyone's going to take you seriously. My Rise deck was formally adopted and formally replaced Majin Bae Rise because everybody in the community knew that that deck needed a refresh. It was just like this kind of thing that everyone understood. That it is just generic, that having a more consistent spell package, having more stall, more healing, more bounces, more stuns, more of all that stuff, versus playing a bunch of chumpers, suited Rise better. And provided it a more consistent win rate when piloted by the top players. Likewise, the answer to Annie Jin statistically might be skill proc duplication, right? But you have to show the stats. If you don't show the stats, no one's going to formally adopt the deck or steal your deck and then provide proper ladder stats for it. No one will, unless you can provide the stats for that construction. Otherwise, it's kind of a one-off meme, right? And like memes are great. Memes are fun as long as they don't get countered. That's always been my position. Like it's only a meme, in fact, if it does get countered. Lucky Cat's playing Rainbow Fish right now in Standard. Again, you probably wouldn't do this in Eternal, but right now he's playing Rainbow Fish. Might be just... Yeah, there we go. So he's playing Rainbow Fish as a 3-of in Standard. And like he's doing great work in Standard ladder with Rainbow Fish. It's only a meme if people answer you. Obviously, if they obliterate or bounce the attack, they bounce like snap bounce the attached unit or snap remove the attached unit, or obliterate it. Like that would feel really bad. And those tools do exist in Eternal, but in Standard they might not be as readily available. So it's only a meme if it gets answered. And I would say the exact same thing about Ravenborn Tomb. It's just like, yep, in those situations where Annie comes down on one, and then Tomb comes down on Annie, or Tomb comes down on Jin, like, things are just not getting removed, and you can just play your hand without concern. It's going to feel great. But we've established that in the Eternal format specifically, there are so many good spells, right? Majin Bae built Control with lots of reactive spells. I built Rise with lots of reactive spells. My version of Temple is exceptionally good at blowing up boards and wide board states. Honestly, it's insanely powerful. So yeah, I would have little concern, I would say, across the board if the opponent was not running any sort of burn finish. And they were just 100% all in on board pressure, because like you just rocket barrage the Jin, and then that's going to ping all the other stuff. Overall, you would be having a good time when you back it up with your standard chumpers and standard mystic shots and your gotchas and all that stuff. It'd be a very easy matchup. But that is the nature of LOR, that, it's not just about the matchups that you can win, it's also about the matchups you don't win. If you're playing a meme and then run into another meme that is a perfect counter for your meme, you're going to get slapped. Like, it doesn't matter how good of a player I am. It is true that I have 100% win rates with competitive decks that are good. Things like Azir Aurelia, things like, my Rise being like 80% over a long period of time. If I play things like Temple being 100% my version of Temple, it is true that when I play good decks, I basically don't lose. But if I play a meme, right, like it's up for anyone. Anyone can take me down as long as they properly meme harder, or play a competitive deck with a meme finish. That's going to do very, very well. This is Eternal King signing out.